In the heart of a Montana blizzard, where the wind screamed like 1,000 wolves and snow swallowed the world whole, a tiny bobcat cub stumbled after Jack Harper and his daughter Lily. 6 miles of desperation in a storm that could kill them all. Why would a wild creature risk everything to follow 2 strangers, its frail body collapsing with every step, as if begging for a miracle? What Jack did next would tear his heart in 2, leaving you to wonder, was it mercy or a mistake that changed their lives forever? Hit that subscribe button and help us reach our first 1,000 subscribers to uncover more stories of survival and sacrifice. In the heart of a Montana blizzard, where the wind screamed like 1,000 wolves and snow swallowed the world whole, a tiny bobcat cub stumbled after Jack Harper and his daughter Lily. 6 miles of desperation in a storm that could kill them all. Why would a wild creature risk everything to follow 2 strangers, its frail body collapsing with every step, as if begging for a miracle? What Jack did next would tear his heart in 2, leaving you to wonder, was it mercy or a mistake that changed their lives forever? Hit that subscribe button and help us reach our first 1,000 subscribers to uncover more stories of survival and sacrifice. The Bitterroot Range in January was no place for the faint of heart. Jack Harper, a rugged 53-year-old ex-forest ranger, knew that better than most. He'd spent decades patrolling these mountains, facing down bears and wildfires, but nothing tested him like the winters, brutal, unforgiving, and quick to claim the unprepared. That morning, he'd laced up his boots and bundled his 12-year-old daughter Lily in a bright blue snowsuit, promising her a hike to the ridge where her mother Claire used to sit and sketch the valley below. It was their ritual since Claire's death 3 years ago. A lung disease stole her breath, leaving Jack and Lily to stitch their broken family back together with these quiet treks through the wilderness she'd loved. The forecast had lied. Clear skies turned to chaos an hour into their climb, the wind hurling snow like shards of glass, slashing visibility to mere feet. Jack pulled his wool cap low, squinting at the compass trembling in his gloved hand. "We're turning back," he shouted over the gale, his voice swallowed by the storm. Lily nodded, her cheeks flushed red beneath her scarf, disappointment flickering in her hazel eyes. They'd barely retraced a quarter mile when she grabbed his sleeve, pointing into the swirling white. "Dad, look!" There, between the shadowed pines, a small shape staggered through the drifts. A bobcat cub, no bigger than a house cat, its tawny fur matted with ice, its legs buckled with every step, ribs jutting beneath its coat like cruel promises of death. Jack froze, instincts warring inside him. He'd seen plenty of animals perish out here, fawns, rabbits, even wolf pups, and he'd drilled it into Lily since she could walk. Don't interfere. Nature has its own rules. But this cub wasn't just dying. It was following them, dragging itself through snow too deep for its trembling frame, its dull eyes locked on them like they were its last hope. "Dad, it's going to die?" Lily's voice cracked, tears freezing on her lashes. The cub let out a pitiful cry, a sound so weak it barely pierced the wind, then collapsed a few steps away. Jack knelt, peering at its sunken face, and something twisted in his chest. Claire's memory flickered, her gentle hands cradling a sparrow with a broken wing, whispering, "Even if it's just for a moment, it deserves to feel safe." He shook his head, shoving the thought away. This wasn't a pet. It was wild, and wild things didn't beg. But then the storm roared louder, a gust nearly knocking Lily off her feet. Jack checked his compass again. Its needle spun uselessly, clogged with ice. They were lost, miles from the cabin, and the temperature was plummeting fast. His guts sank. They wouldn't make it home like this, not with the wind clawing at them and night closing in. He had 2 choices: keep moving and risk freezing to death with a dying cub in tow, or dig a snow shelter and pray they'd all survive till dawn. "Hold on," he muttered, dropping his pack. With numb hands, he carved a shallow cave into a drift, lining it with pine boughs. He scooped the cub up, its body limp and lighter than it should have been, and wrapped it in Claire's old wool scarf, the one she'd knitted for him their first winter together. He handed it to Lily, who clutched it to her chest, her breath hitching. "Keep it warm," he said, voice gruff. In his mind, a dark thought coiled. If it dies tonight, at least I tried. But as he sealed the shelter's entrance, he couldn't shake the question, was I saving it or risking her? When the first howl echoed through the storm, Jack's blood ran cold. Something was out there, and it wasn't far. The howl cut through the blizzard like a blade, sharp and close, too close. Inside the cramped snow shelter, Jack Harper tensed, his hand instinctively gripping the hatchet strapped to his pack. The flickering glow of a single dry branch he'd managed to ignite cast jagged shadows on the icy walls, illuminating Lily's pale face as she cradled the bobcat cub, Ash, against her chest. Her breath puffed in quick, shallow bursts, warming the tiny creature wrapped in her mother's scarf. "Dad, what was that?" she whispered, eyes wide with fear. Jack didn't answer. He knew the sound. A wolf pack drawn by the scent of weakness, and Ash was a beacon in the storm. The night stretched on, an endless siege of wind and cold. Jack kept the fire alive with scraps of bark, his fingers numb as he fed the flames, while Lily murmured to Ash stories of Claire, her soft voice trembling but steady. "Mom used to say every life matters, even the smallest ones," she said, stroking the cub's matted fur. To Jack's surprise, Ash stirred, its tongue flicking out to lap a few drops of melted snow from her fingers. It was alive, barely, but each weak movement felt like a fragile thread holding them all together. He couldn't tell Lily the truth gnawing at him. This cub might not make it, and their shelter might not hold if the wolves got bolder. Dawn broke gray and merciless, the storm still raging but the howls fading into the distance. Jack poked his head out, scanning the drifts. The air bit his face, but the wolves were gone. For now. "We've got to move," he said, voice hoarse. Lily nodded, clutching Ash as Jack dismantled the shelter. They stepped into the snow, the cub's weight a quiet burden in her arms. But it wasn't long before Jack noticed something chilling. Ash wasn't just lying still, it was trying to follow them, dragging itself whenever Lily set it down to adjust her scarf. Its dull eyes tracked her every move, a desperate, wordless plea. Half a mile into their trek, Jack spotted it, a larger set of paw prints, feline, not canine, etched into the snow. A mother bobcat's tracks, he guessed, but they were days old, buried under fresh powder. His stomach sank. Ash hadn't wandered off in the storm, it had been abandoned, too weak to keep up with its kin. He glanced at Lily, her face buried in her hood, and kept the discovery to himself. She didn't need to know, not yet, but the truth fueled a storm inside him. Should he leave Ash here, where it belonged, even if it meant death, or keep carrying it, risking their lives with every step? The wolves hadn't given up. Another howl, closer this time, sent a jolt through Jack's spine. He quickened their pace, but Ash slowed them down. When Lily stumbled, nearly dropping the cub into a drift, Jack made a snap decision. He fished a strip of venison jerky from his pack, meant for their lunch, and tore off a piece, holding it out to Ash. The cub sniffed, then gnawed at it with feeble jaws, a spark of life flaring in its eyes. "Come on, little one," he muttered, luring it forward. Lily's face lit up, but Jack's heart twisted. "I'm making it dependent," he thought. "This isn't survival, it's a leash." 6 miles of hell stretched between them and the cabin. The storm clawed at their backs, snow piling higher, and Ash's halting steps left a jagged trail behind. Jack's legs burned, his breath ragged, but he pushed on, Lily at his side, her small hand gripping his sleeve. They were close, he could feel it, when a shadow flickered through the trees. Not a wolf, bigger, faster. Jack squinted, heart pounding, and saw the glint of eyes in the whiteout. Yellow, piercing, and locked on Ash. Lily gasped, clutching the cub tighter, but Jack's mind raced. Was it Ash's mother, come to reclaim her lost child, or something else? Something that saw them all as prey. As the cabin's faint outline loomed through the snow, Jack heard it again. Soft, deliberate footsteps crunching in the drifts. Not Ash's. Whatever was out there was closing in. The cabin emerged from the blizzard like a ghost, its snow-laden roof a faint promise of safety after 6 miles of torment. Jack Harper kicked the door open, ushering Lily inside as she clutched Ash, the bobcat cub still wrapped in Claire's scarf. His legs trembled from exhaustion, his breath a ragged cloud in the frigid air, but they'd made it. Barely. Whatever shadowed them in the storm hadn't followed, or so he hoped. He bolted the door, the thud echoing in the silence, and turned to Lily. Her blue snowsuit was caked with ice, her face pale, but her eyes burned with a fierce determination as she set Ash on the kitchen table. "He's still breathing, Dad," she said, voice trembling with relief. Jack stoked the wood stove, its crackling warmth seeping into the room as he peeled off his gloves. Lily filled a bowl with water, adding a pinch of salt and sugar, a trick he'd picked up from ranger days, and coaxed drops into Ash's mouth with a spoon. The cub's tongue flickered, weak but alive, and for a fleeting moment, Jack felt a flicker of pride. They'd defied the storm, the wolves, the odds. He built a makeshift crate from an old toolbox, lining it with blankets, and Lily nestled Ash inside, whispering, "You're safe now." But safe wasn't enough. Not when every rib showed through its patchy fur, a grim tally of starvation. Days blurred into a week. The storm raged on, sealing them in, but Ash grew stronger, slowly. Lily mashed venison jerky into a paste, feeding it tiny bites, and Jack marveled at how its eyes cleared, how it began to paw at the crate's edges. He called the wildlife center on their satellite phone, but the line crackled with bad news. Roads were blocked. Help wouldn't come for days. "Keep it warm, hydrated," the voice advised. "You're on your own." Jack hung up, staring at Ash. "On our own." The words echoed Claire's last days, helpless, watching her fade in that sterile hospital room. Then it happened. On the 7th night, as Lily read aloud from one of Claire's old journals by the stove, Ash's body jerked. A violent shudder ran through it, eyes rolling back, legs twitching, a guttural whine escaping its throat. Lily screamed, dropping the book. "Dad, what's wrong with him?" Jack lunged for the crate, his heart hammering. Splayed on the blankets, Ash convulsed, foam flecking its jaws. Malnutrition, shock, he realized, panic clawing at him. It was dying, right there, after everything. He grabbed the first aid kit, hands shaking as he dialed the center again. "It's seizing," he barked into the phone. The ranger's voice crackled through static. "Adrenaline, 0.1 milliliters intramuscular. You've got a syringe?" Jack fumbled for the kit's epinephrine shot, a relic from his ranger days, as Lily sobbed, "Don't hurt him, Dad, please." He knelt beside the crate, syringe glinting in the firelight, and hesitated. Claire's face flashed, her frail hand squeezing his, her final whisper, "Do what's right." But what was right? Let Ash die quietly, or stab it with a needle and pray? "Hold him steady," he told Lily, voice breaking. She pinned Ash's trembling body, tears streaming down her cheeks as Jack plunged the needle into its flank. The cub's scream pierced the cabin, a raw, wrenching sound that tore through him like a blade. Lily wailed, "Stop it!" But Jack held firm, pushing the plunger. Seconds stretched into eternity. The fire's crackle, the only sound as Ash went limp. Jack's breath caught. "I killed it." Until its chest heaved. A shallow rise, then another. Its eyes fluttered open, clearer than ever, locking onto his. Lily collapsed against him, sobbing into his coat, and Jack let the syringe clatter to the floor. Tears burned his eyes, the first since Claire's funeral, as he pulled Lily close. They'd saved Ash, snatched it from death's jaws, but a shadow lingered in his mind. Had they fought for its life, or just prolonged a battle it couldn't win? As the storm howled outside, Jack glanced at the phone, its battery dead. Whatever came next, they'd face it alone. The storm finally broke, leaving the Montana wilderness draped in a brittle silence, the kind that follows a war. Inside the cabin, Ash thrived. His once dull coat now gleamed with a faint luster, his movements sharp and curious as he batted at the edges of his crate. Jack Harper watched from the kitchen table, nursing a mug of black coffee, while Lily sat cross-legged on the floor, reading Claire's journals aloud to the cub, as if it understood her tales of mountain summers and starlit night. "It likes your voice, Mom," she whispered, tracing a finger along Ash's tufted ears. The cub purred, a low, wild rumble, and pressed its head into her hand, a gesture so tender it made Jack's throat tighten. Weeks slipped by, and Ash grew bolder. He'd paw at the door, eyes darting to the forest beyond, but whenever Lily opened it, he'd circle back to her, curling up by her feet like a loyal shadow. Jack saw the danger in it. Wild things weren't meant to linger. The Wildlife Center called when the roads cleared, their voice firm through the satellite phone. "He's strong enough. Release him near where you found him. Don't let him bond too deep." Jack relayed the plan to Lily over breakfast, her fork pausing mid-air. "But he's happy with us," she protested, voice small. Jack sighed, meeting her gaze. "Happy isn't free, Lily. He's not ours to keep." They started small, trekking Ash out on a long lead, letting him sniff the pine-scented air and stalk fallen twigs. He pounced on a vole one crisp morning, his first kill, and Lily cheered, until he trotted back to her, dropping the prize at her boots like a gift. Jack's jaw tightened. "He's got to learn," he muttered. But each night Ash followed them home, meowing at the cabin door until Lily let him in. "He doesn't want to go, Dad," she cried one evening, tears streaking her face as Ash nuzzled her knee. Jack knelt beside her, voice soft but firm. "He doesn't know what he wants. We have to show him." The tipping point came in early March. Jack drove them deep into the bitter route to a rocky overhang he'd scouted. Old Bobcat's scat and claw marks hinted at a territory nearby. "This is his place," he told Lily, unclipping Ash's lead. The cub bounded forward, sniffing the ground, then froze as a shadow shifted in the underbrush. A guttural growl rumbled out, a full-grown bobcat, twice Ash's size, its eyes glinting with menace. Jack's pulse spiked. "Back, now," he hissed, grabbing Lily's arm. But Ash didn't run. He crouched, ears flat, a tiny snarl curling his lips. The bigger cat lunged, a blur of fur and fangs, and Ash yelped as claws raked his flank. Lily screamed, "Dad, help him!" and broke free, lunging toward the fight. Jack yanked her back, pinning her against a tree as the snarls echoed. Ash rolling in the dirt, blood flecking the snow. "He has to do this!" Jack shouted, his voice raw. Lily pounded his chest, sobbing. "You're letting him die!" The clash ended fast. The older bobcat retreated, leaving Ash battered but breathing, a gash weeping red along his side. Jack dragged Lily away, her cries piercing the forest. But Ash's pained whimper followed them, a dagger in Jack's heart. They stumbled home in silence, Lily's face a mask of betrayal. Jack locked the door, sinking into a chair, hands trembling. He'd done what the center said, let nature take its course, but her words echoed. "You're letting him die." Had he? Ash was out there, wounded, maybe bleeding out, and Jack couldn't shake the image of Claire's disapproving eyes. Lily curled up by the stove, refusing to speak, her journal clutched like a shield. Outside, the wind carried a faint, mournful cry. Ash's or another's, Jack couldn't tell. As night fell, something scratched at the cabin door. Lily bolted upright, hope flaring in her eyes, but Jack's hand froze on the latch. What waited out there? Salvation or a ghost? The scratching at the cabin door stopped as abruptly as it began, leaving a hollow silence that pressed against Jack Harper's ears. Lily leapt to her feet, her tear-streaked face alight with desperate hope, but Jack held the latch firm, his breath shallow. "Wait," he whispered, peering through the frosted window into the Montana night. The porch was empty, the snow undisturbed save for a faint trail of prints, small, uneven, leading back to the forest's edge. "It's him!" Lily breathed, shoving past Jack to fling the door wide. Cold air rushed in, but Ash wasn't there. Only the wind answered, carrying a distant, mournful mule that faded into the pines. 3 days dragged by, heavy with unspoken grief. Lily barely ate, her eyes fixed on the tree line beyond the cabin, waiting for a shadow that didn't come. Jack tried to reach her, offering hot cocoa, stoking the fire, but she shrank from him, her silence a wall he couldn't breach. "You left him to die," she had said that first night, her voice a blade, and the words festered in Jack's chest. He replayed the fight in his mind, Ash's tiny snarl, the bigger bobcat's claws, the blood on the snow. Had he abandoned a fighter or spared it a slower death? Claire's memory haunted him. Her gentle hands, her belief in second chances. And he wondered if she'd hate him now. On the third morning, as Jack chopped wood in the gray dawn, a rustle broke the stillness. He froze, axe mid-swing, and there, at the forest's edge, stood Ash. Not the frail cub they'd carried through the blizzard, but a leaner, sharper version, its coat thick and glossy, marred by fresh scars along its flank. Its eyes, once dull with hunger, burned bright and wild, locking onto Jack with a quiet intensity. Lily stepped onto the porch, her gasp soft as a prayer. "Ash!" she whispered, dropping her mug, cocoa pooling in the snow. Jack set the axe down, heart pounding. "Stay back," he cautioned, but Lily knelt, extending a trembling hand. The same gesture she'd used 100 times to call him. Ash didn't rush forward. He padded across the clearing with deliberate steps, stopping a few feet away, his tufted ears flicking. For a long moment he studied them, then dipped his head, brushing it briefly against Lily's fingers. A deep, rumbling purr vibrated from his chest, a sound of recognition, not need. He repeated it with Jack, his fur coarse against Jack's calloused palm before stepping back. Lily's tears fell freely now, not from sorrow, but something deeper. Pride, loss, love tangled together. "He's saying goodbye," Jack said, voice thick, pulling her into his arms. Ash turned, tail flicking, and trotted toward the trees. At the forest's edge he paused, silhouetted against the rising sun, and let out a cry. Not the weak plea of a dying cub, but a bold, free call that echoed through the bitter root. Then he was gone, swallowed by the wilderness that had forged him. Years later, on Lily's 16th birthday, Jack handed her a gift wrapped in brown paper. She tore it open, revealing a wooden bobcat he'd carved, its scars and tufted ears a perfect echo of Ash, its stance fierce yet serene. Tucked beneath was a note in his scrawled hand. "For those we love, and those we set free." Lily placed it on her windowsill, where the morning light caught it each day, and whispered, "Mom would have been proud, Ash, of you, of us." Outside, a bobcat's cry drifted through the trees. Maybe Ash, maybe another, but to Lily it was a promise. He'd lived. They'd catch glimpses over the years, a flash of tawny fur, a shadow stalking the ridge, but never close enough to be sure. Jack liked to think Ash thrived out there, king of his own wild corner. Lily believed he remembered them, that his farewell wasn't the end. And as twilight settled over the cabin that night, with the carving glowing softly in the dusk, Jack wondered, did we save him, or did he save us?